Good morning. Um, just to let you know, we've been having some internet issues over the weekend, and hopefully not today. Hopefully things have resolved, but we'll see. Uh, it's frustrating, right? When you don't really know what's going on or what's wrong. Things have just kind of slowed down. We may need to upgrade something or change something. I don't know. We'll see. Um, but it's summer, so maybe that's the way of things. Just everything slows down a little bit. I've been thinking about that uh, yesterday and today. So um, I was working on the fence this weekend, and we got a little bit done, but not that much. My brother came over and we took out a tree that had grown into the fence line um, over the years and had really pushed the fence out, which contributed to its demise, but it was quite an old fence. At least, well, we've been here 20 years, um, and I'm sure the people we bought it from were here at least um, 20 years before that. So yeah, probably 40-year-old fence. It's probably seen its life cycle, I think. Um, but uh, despite that, it still was difficult to get out in certain places. But um, so we got that done, and we got a couple of the new panels put in on the other side, but going slowly. It is uh, it's hard when it's really hot to get a whole lot done, and I think this is maybe a good lesson to think about. What are you trying to do? Um, are you working with your abilities, your strengths, um, the climate, right? Your environment, um, the time that you have, the resources that you have. All of these things are very important. And it applies to everything that we do. Um, Yoga is, again, that search for the truth. And the truth is that we aren't always um, able to do what we want. We often bite off in our minds a much larger um, chunk than we can actually accomplish. And rather than being disappointed by this or feel like we failed in some way, instead let's use that knowledge to make better choices in the future. So when we are doing these things, we're learning, right? We're learning what we should and shouldn't do, what we can and can't do, what is appropriate for one time of year, one stage of our life might be different than what is appropriate later. And I think this is, a constant. And this is constantly going to come up for us again and again and again with everything that we do, our practice, our life. Um, when we are trying to push ourselves beyond our abilities, beyond our capacity, is when we're going to start having problems. That's when we hurt ourselves. That's when uh, we break down, right? Our practice and our whatever it is we're doing becomes a chore, becomes a um, something we dread rather than something that we look forward to and we are anxious to get back to. Um, I know it sounds kind of crazy, right, to think um, that these things that we often think of as chores could be something that we look forward to, but they really can. Um, and if they aren't for you, right, if there are things, not everything, right, some things we just don't like doing. My husband, when we got married, said, "Don't ask me to clean bathrooms." He does clean bathrooms from time to time, but not as much as he does other things, because that was something that he was forced to do as a child and really disliked. So luckily for him, it doesn't bother me that much. So we could make those accommodations. But there are other things that he does that I really don't like. So um, knowing, right, what it is, those things may never become enjoyable to you, but there will be things that can. Um, we want to make them enjoyable, and the way we do this is by pacing ourselves, by understanding that when we force ourselves to do something beyond our capacity, ability, um, the time that we have, whatever it is, right? We're going to hate it. It doesn't matter. Even the most fun thing becomes a dreadful if we are not in the right state. Um, so let's work on that first, right? Look at what we have. And again, right, here's another little yoga thing. Remember how we talk about um, the process and the intention as what's important, much more so than the outcome, right? So, what you do, if you have a job that you need to get done and you hate every step of the way, you've dragged yourself to do it, you're miserable, you're unhappy. Yeah, maybe your job gets done, but at what cost? Right? What has that done to you? What have you done to yourself? Um, Maybe it's something that you hate, right? And you've dreaded it all week long. Here's the weekend, you have to do it. And so you have a whole week of misery. And now you have a weekend of misery as well. And how is this a good way to live? It's not. So work on the intent, work on your attitude, work on your day to day, right? How is this working? How is this, um, can we get this aligned? And then when it actually comes time to do whatever it is you need to do, you just do what you can. The outcome, right, is not as important as the intent, as the feeling around what's happening, right? Because this is the important part. This is what stays with us. Um, this is what you will carry through to the next project or the next activity or the next practice, right? Um, if you come away with a terrible feeling, you won't want to come back to it. You won't want to continue. So we want to preserve that good that that good feeling. And the only way to do that is to work moderately, right? Finding that middle path as always. That middle path means you are going to move slower than you might want. Right? Maybe you are an extremely, motivated person, very ambitious, very going to get this done. That may not always work. Uh, know when to change, know when to scale that back. Um, it can be hard, right, to find your pace, to find your um, rate at which you will do things and be able to continue to do things. But that's really the key, right? We don't want to burn ourselves out with anything. Um, We want to be able to work at a nice, steady pace. And everyone has that, right? Some people are not, their tendency is not for that. Um, I've talked before about the Ayurvedic, the three dosha, right? These three things that we all like kind of have in us, right? So there's the kapha and the pitta and the vata, right? So kapha is this very slow moving, very steady, very connected, right? Very solid. Um, that is what the kapha is about, right? Kapha is building. Kapha is, um, but slow moving, right? Pitta is heat and activity and uh, really ambitious and driven, right? Pitta is, anger and uh, short temper. I think of pitta as like that short temper, that irritation, but also that direction, that focus, and it's a really heat. There's a lot of heat and activity to pitta. Vata also has a lot of activity, but it's not directed. It's just kind of spinning up there in the air. Um, Vata is activity with no connection, no direction. It's anxiety. It's right. So if you want to think of these three things, you can think of them as different. There's different ways to visualize them. Right. Earth is kapha. Fire is pitta. Vata is air. Um, Kapha is like almost is depression, right? I mean, if you want to think of it as like mental states. And the thing about dosha actually means like uh, defect, right? So I mean, it sounds terrible, but it's not so much. I mean, that's sort of what it means, but what we think of it as is kind of like weakness or your Achilles heel, right? Your the place where things start to fall apart for you, right? So kapha in its worst state is kind of a depression, right? It's a inertia and instability or uh, stability, but inability, right, to move, to get out of where you are. Pitta is anger, right? Is that rage that people carry within them, right? Vata is anxiety, right? So Vata is this kind of I can't focus on anything, but everything seems scary, right? Um, these three things we struggle with, all of us, at different times, right? We may have a little piece of each of those. Um, but at any given time, right? Or at any given time, we usually have two. Two are interacting usually. There is such thing as tridoshic, but that's pretty rare, much rarer than people think. Everybody thinks, oh, well, I have all those things. You do, but they're going to kind of be active at different times. And there's different ways to think of the doshas, right? There's a kind of a mental state, like where are you at right now, which changes from time to time. Um, there is a stage of life dosha, right? So you have a tendency towards different things at different times in your life. When you're young, kapha is a big one for you because you're growing. You're solid and connected, but you're building. Right? Kapha is this building process. Pitta is more midlife, right? We're very focused, very driven, trying to get stuff done. And vata comes into play as we get older, right? We get a little more in our heads, a little more spiritual, and kind of, but also that anxiety can fire up. And then we have what we call constitutional dosha, which is kind of what your body the setting your body is like as a default, right? And we all have, right, a setting where we are um, physically and emotionally and mentally, kind of it all works together. Um, this doesn't really change. It may change in that you don't have as much of an expression of that, um, but your basic constitutional dosha is going to stay the same, and you can see it in people's bodies, right? Not necessarily, but they do. It does. There's a correlation, right? So people who are very light and petite, tiny, small, they are more in the vata, right? They've got a lot of more vata usually in their body, and that is driving, right, that physical state. Kapha tends to be solid and large, and they 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 have that solidity to them. And then pitta's maybe in between, right? Somewhere in between. Um, these are very general, very general terms, and um, you will have combinations of these things. And but once you sort of are aware of them and you become aware of what your particular doshic pattern is, um, you can start doing things to kind of improve that. Right? So it's about knowing kind of your nature. And then when you know your nature, you know how to help motivate yourself, how to get yourself out of whatever rut you've run down into, right? So for a Kaphic person, and I'm going to use myself for an example. I am a Pitta Kapha mix. Um, when my Kapha is high, I feel myself getting depressed. I feel myself running down into that rut. When my Pitta is high, my anger is coming out, my irritation, my craziness, right? My inability to my relentless like pursuit of whatever it is I'm trying to do is getting over top of me. So you can see that these combinations in some ways can be very good, right? Pitta Kapha is an excellent combination because Kapha is the stability, Pitta is the driver, right? Pitta Pitta Vata, not so bad, right? I mean, if you can keep them under control, the Pitta and the Vata are, or the Pitta and the Vata are super. There's a lot of energy there, um, but you need to keep them under wraps because it's also you have the ability to just blow up, right? Um, Kapha is an excellent base for everybody, right? Everybody's like Kapha means you're fat or something. Kapha does tend to put on flesh, right? It is a building dosha. Um, but there is a stability to that. Kapha is a good base for a lot of the different doshas. It's a grounding and earth based earth based place. So not so bad. Um, it keeps you grounded. It keeps you regulated. People who are highly vatic have a lot of issues, right? I mean, it is hard. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of just kind of out there. Um, People with a lot of pitta, it's you know those people are type A all the way. Um, burning it up. People with ulcers, people people with anger management issues, right? We all know these people. um, and without a little base of something solid, it's hard to get these things under control. Um, so when we have our nature, we know how to work with it. We know what we need to do, and if you don't, you may already know, right? You may already know, not even in um, an Ayurvedic sense, maybe you already know what helps you, right? And it's funny, but like what helps you, you may unknowingly be doing these things that kind of counteract. So, right, the opposite is what soothes your dosha. Your dosha is when you're out of balance, when you are way over on one side, right? So, people who have a lot of pitta, a lot of anger, they're great, to eat things that are cooling, to try to cool off, to stay away from hot things, stay away from hot weather, stay away from hot food, like spicy, spicy food. Warm food is fine, right? But spicy things that are going to raise that internal heat. Not recommended. Um, and then hot weather, right? The summer pittas have a hard time in summer. You want to try to keep your pitta low, which means, right, eating cooling things, eating sweeter things, right? And by sweet, I don't mean sugar and stuff, but I mean things like fruit, things like milk, things like that have a sweet nature to them. Those are the things that are going to kind of cool you down and kind of regulate some of that. Um, and then, you know, things that are steadying, um, things that bring you back down to earth. So, meditation, letting go of the anger thing, knowing that it's there, but trying not to let it take over. These are all things that may help. Um, so, all of this is to say that we want to work um, at a pace that is sustainable, at a pace that we can keep going with. Um, and right, the doshas may help with that. If you have kapha, if you have some kapha, kapha people can work and work and work and work forever. Right? They are the king of pace myself. Um, they have an inner endurance that is way beyond. Um, and that's something that everyone, if you want, drawing upon a Kaphic nature in you is good because that will keep you going. Um, Pitta burns out, right? Anger is hot and fiery, but it dissipates. And Vata, Vata's not organized enough to even get those things done. But they can with the steady. They need a little anchor, something to hold them down, to hold them um, a yoke, right? Yoga. So you will find a lot of Vatic people in yoga because Vata is a very spiritual, very, very spiritual sort of thing. They've got a lot of, they're in their head a lot. They're thinking a lot about spiritual things. And also, yoga is that yoke, right? It is a structure, it is a way to harness all of that energy in a directed way. So it's wonderful, right? If you have a lot of vata, and for you to be drawn to yoga is like one of the best things that you could do, right? It will help you ground. It will help you be grounded. But it's good for all of the doshas, right? So pitta, it's going to moderate and again direct. Um, Kapha, it's going to motivate, right? And direct. Um, so Gothic people are probably better at moderating and pacing, just because they have this internal endurance, um, which means for Pitta and Vata, it's actually more important, right? That you work on that pacing, because it is easy for you to burn out. It is easy for you to become exhausted, overexhausted. Um, so taking breaks when you need to, and not expecting you to be able to do the same thing as everybody else. That, maybe you have, maybe you're a Vatic person and you have a Kaphic spouse, and they're ready to just keep working all day long, and you're like, I can't do that. I'm done. I'm exhausted. Speak up, right? Say what you need to say, and do what you need to do. Um, Self-care is just that. Um, you need to be able to take care of yourself, because you're the only one who knows what you need. Other people can try to guess, but they aren't living in your skin, and they don't know what's going on in there. Only you do. So, um, knowing what you need to know about yourself will help you make better choices, and then be able to do what you need to do. So, being aware of um, your dosha is very helpful, right? Both in terms of, the simple thing, right? You can think of the weather, the climate, right? You may find, if you have a really strong climate preference, that may correspond with your dosha, right? So Vatic people will be drawn to warmer weather, warmer, even like more humid weather. Like, so I would expect people that live in Delaware and love this weather, they got to be Vatic. So it doesn't mean necessarily everyone in Delaware, everyone in Florida is a Vata. They're not, right? There are a lot of people like me that are just suffering it out during those hot and humid. Vata is a very dry, right? It's a very dry sign. You think of air as being very dry, whereas um, water is the one thing I didn't really mention, right? So that's the other sort of sign, but it kind of mixes with them. So Kapha is like an earth and water, right? So Kapha people and Kapha in general does much worse in the heat and in the damp, right? They like dry heat, or well, not even heat, but drier weather, lower humidity. So I'm telling you, I'm always on the search for that low humidity place, not too hot, not too cold. That's where I want to be. Um, but it's also important to remember, right? So you you are not the only person, right? So people who are suffering in the heat, let's say you aren't a person that suffers in the heat, and you're like, I don't even understand. How can people hate this, right? I always love the cold weather, but Kapha or Vata hates the cold weather. Oh my God, especially the cold winter weather that we have in, like, say, January, when it's so dry, just, your hair is staticky, and your fingertips are dry. I love that weather. But Vata people, oh, they hate that. They just can't stand that. So truly, we suffer differently in different types of weather, depending on our body type, depending on our dosha, and all of these things. So have sympathy for those people who are suffering, even if you feel like this is the best. I love this. We truly do not feel things this similarly. We have different needs in our body, as well as our mind and our emotions. So have compassion for those of us who are suffering in the humid and hot weather. uh, it is a thing, um, that people are, you know experiencing things differently. I think, in general, we do tend to feel that, like, everyone is like us, right? Um, why can't they do this? Why can't they just do this? Well, if you find certain things in your life easy, um, or very tolerable or very simple, remember that not everyone is you, that you may have some gifts and some skills that are unique or very special, or that you have developed over the years. I think we tend to not give ourselves credit for these things. Instead, we think everyone knows this, everyone has this, but they don't. And rather than be irritated by people who are struggling, who aren't able to grasp things as quickly as you can, or who are struggling with something, have some compassion for them. Understand that they are working with a different set of tools than you are. Um, and have compassion for wherever they are in their journey. Um, it's sometimes hard, right? Because uh, we're in a rush, right? We want to get things done, and it can be frustrating when people aren't on the same page, when people can't keep up, um, when people are struggling to even understand what you're talking about. The other thing that can be really frustrating is when you know something that can help someone that they aren't doing, or that you've mentioned, right? This is the most maddening thing in the world, right? Someone asks you for advice and you give it, and they agree that is excellent advice. And then they proceed to do the exact opposite. Um, this happens so much in my life and probably in everyone's life that I feel like it's just a given at this point, um, that this should be the way it is. Uh, that someone values your opinion but chooses not to follow it, right? So, in yoga terms, we could think of this as um, the same thing as not getting worried about what other people are doing, right? Advice is probably pointless, right? Even though someone may ask for it, even though they may really, really want to hear it, they probably don't really want to hear it. Well, they want to hear it, but they don't want to listen to it. Let's put it that way. Um, it is a truth that the things that we learn ourselves are the real lessons that we learn. Um, the things that people tell us don't don't really don't really stay with us. Um, Even people whose opinion we value, um, because their experience and their journey is not yours. You maybe are really destined to make this big mistake. So people, you ask for a lot of advice. What should I do? Should I do this or this? What do you think? Which this? And you ask like 10 really smart people, what would they do? What would you do? What is your best? And then you don't follow any of those things. You just blunder off and do whatever it is you want to do, and make a mistake. Um, that is the nature of it, right? We make those mistakes because those are what teach us, right? If you look back in your life, I'll bet you remember the mistakes that you made much bigger than the successes. And even things that you did successfully, you learn those lessons by the mistakes you made along the way. Um, those are the things that stay with you, and those are the lessons that you were meant to learn. Um, you can live a life that is nothing but decisions made for you by someone who's very well meaning and thinks they know what would be sensible for you to do. And those may be very sensible things for you to do. But following someone else's path makes you uh, a follower, right? They have set a path. They're the ones making the decisions, right? What you want to do is be the decision maker in your own life. even if that means mistakes, actually, especially if that means mistakes, because you will learn from those mistakes. You will get better. You will make better choices. You will learn about your capacity, about your abilities, about your nature, your dosha, um, your weaknesses, right? The places where you will fall down. This is important stuff, and not to be avoided, not to be ignored, but to really be focused on, right? If you know that you struggle with being by yourself, um, you can make better choices. If you know you struggle being in a group, you can try to make better choices around that too. Um, if you don't know any of those things because you just do what everyone else tells you, um, you're never going to be able to chart your own path in a meaningful way. So embrace, right? Embrace the struggle. The struggle is what we're working on. Um, there is no there's nothing more important than what we learn here um, in our time. We have a time here, a certain time. I don't know how long. Everybody, everybody, no one knows how long we have. Um, each of us has our own time frame, our own time to live here on earth. Um, what are we going to do with it? We're going to learn. We're going to learn the lessons that we are here to learn. Um, I don't know what comes after. Nobody does. Um, in yoga philosophy, the belief is that we come back again and we learn more, right? But ideally, we learn a little bit more, right? Even if we don't remember a lot of those lessons, we don't remember being here, we don't remember our past life or whatever, that deep knowledge is still there. Um, and the belief is in yoga philosophy is that if you are on a yoga path, it's because you've been here many times before. Um, you've found the path again and you're going to lose it again, right? And then you got to find it again and make a little more progress, right? This is the ultimate long-term project, right? It's that trek towards samadhi, towards that ultimate goal when we are with the universe in perfect knowledge, in perfect peace and harmony, and a state of neither wanting nor needing anything, just bliss, eternal. Um, it's hard to imagine, right? If you've ever touched that with your meditations or whatever, you know it is a blissful and transformative place to be. But we don't get there overnight. It takes time. Um, but we take a step. Maybe maybe this lifetime we take a couple steps. I don't know. Uh, but every time we get smarter and we get better and we get. I like to think of. I personally, I personally do believe in reincarnation. I believe that it makes a very deep sense. It resonates with me, um, and I believe it helps me understand some of the stuff that I see around me. Right, when I see people acting very cruelly, acting very terribly, with uh, no kindness, no compassion, no concern for the consequences of their actions. I see that as a very young soul, someone who really doesn't understand how this whole thing works. Right? They're like a toddler with toys that they break. because they don't understand them, because they don't know how to take care of them. Um, they are, uh, they're just beginning. And we can have compassion for that, right? Just like we would a toddler who is having a tantrum and doesn't understand how to deal with their emotions and behave themselves. Um, and then you meet other people who seem, even at very young age, seem really tuned in. They really understand a lot about themselves and about the people around them. They have an inherent wisdom that does not really make sense with their life experience to date, unless you think about what may have come before. So um, it makes sense to me. It's certainly not the only way that we talk about these things, and it is not at all a requirement to believe in that. Because again, who knows? Nobody knows. That's the important thing, is to know that yoga does not tell you what to believe, because yoga is it's just a framework for truth, your truth, um, and your truth may be something completely different. Um, these things are not incompatible. These things are not unreconcilable. Um, you will know what's true in here, right? What resonates with you, what vibrates with you, is the truth. And this is something I've consistently tried to do in my life, is find those things that resonate. And by resonate, you probably know what that means, but I mean it in almost a real physical sense. When I come across bits of information, I know in my in by how I feel internally, I know if that is something that I need to pay attention to, because there's a vibration. I feel like a humming, a humming sensation in my body, like a tuning fork. If you've ever used an old tuning fork to tune a guitar or something like that, you hit it and you put it on the thing, and it vibrates, and you'll feel it. You can hear it. You can also feel it in your hand. Um, that's the sensation that I get, to a greater or lesser extent. Um, that is my my notice to pay attention. This is important, right? This is something that is important. And you may have experienced that in your own life and not really understood what that was. That's what it is. It's a wake-up call. It's like someone flicking you on the head. Hey, this is important. Pay attention. Um, learn what you can about this. This is not maybe it may be something important in a big sense, like something that's going to help you make sense of your path here in your life, or it could be a small thing, but something that you need for right now, right? Something maybe you've been struggling with, and here's this bit of information. Um, that vibration is what I think of as, and what I have experienced in the universe, right? Giving me a gift. A gift. And it doesn't always look like a gift. Sometimes it looks like work. Sometimes it's uh, a this is a good quote from I think it's a Thomas Edison quote. Thomas Edison was kind of a bad guy, right? But it's a good quote anyway. Um, I'm trying to think. Opportunity, I think it starts. Opportunity is missed um, by a lot of people because it comes dressed in overalls and looks like work. So it's not always a gift in the sense of what we consider a gift, right? A beautifully wrapped package that you open up and enjoy. No, frequently the universe gives you a job, Um, and it's not always an easy job. It can be a big struggle. But again, it's important. There is an importance to it. And this is not at all like I don't experience this every day. I don't experience this every week or even every month. I can't even tell you how often I've experienced it. I think I experience it when I need to experience it. And then when I'm done with whatever that is, there'll be something else that comes up. And I don't always take up all of these opportunities. Sometimes it's just something I have to learn, something I read about. I'll be reading on the internet and something will pop up and I'll be like, oh, that's important. Let's do a little more research. Um, so it's not always a big thing. And I haven't had yet. I mean, some people do get these sort of life changing, job assignments. Like, hey, you need to just pick up and go, and here's you're gonna go do your thing. Um, Sometimes that happens. Not everybody, heeds that call, right? Um, but there are other things, right? Even if you don't heed that call, there'll be more calls. It's like, you know, old phones before answering machines, before everything else, right? If you called somebody and they didn't answer, you called back because you couldn't leave a message. There was no sort of false sense of connection, right? What we have now, we send a text, we send an email, we leave a message, we assume that our message has gotten out there, that the person has read it, has understood it, and just doesn't want to reply, doesn't want to answer you. Um, which is wrong, right? I mean, like that is a false assumption. If you have that assumption, um, there are a million things that might have happened between you sending those things and the person actually reading them. Um, do not assume that those things, your message has gotten through. Communication is still just like that old telephone. Until that person picks up and says hello and you actually speak to them, you aren't making that connection. Um, so you need to keep trying. And that's what the universe does. It just keeps trying. If you won't answer this call, how about this one? Um, if you're too busy to take their first phone call, they might start banging on your door, right? They might start, someone in the street might just like stop and start talking to you. I mean, um, depending on the urgency of the message, it could escalate. So um, be ready, be open to these things. I think they're gifts, right? My experience has been that they always enrich my life and frequently make my life easier and more enjoyable and lead me to a space where um, I can do more um, and really become more of what I want to be. All right. So I've spent this whole class just talking and talking, um, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because I'm a little beat up from yesterday, but not as bad as some weekends. Um, I have settled in to the summer. In the spring, right, we're in a rush. Everybody's in a rush trying to get stuff in, get plants in, get jobs done. We got rain coming. We got this. Got to get it done. Weather's good. We're feeling good. We're getting a lot of stuff done. As we move into summer, things slow down. And it's hot. You really can't get as much done. But you got to keep going, right? You can't just give up and do nothing all summer long. Um, I, it sort of puts me in mind of like summer vacation when you were a kid, how wonderful it was for the first couple of weeks, and then you were just bored to death. So don't get bored to death. Find a project that you can work on. a practice, something, maybe yogic, maybe not yogic, well, always yogic, but maybe directly related to yoga, or maybe not. Maybe some gardening, maybe something outside. It's a beautiful time to do it. And I got to tell you, gardening, all of those things that you're doing outdoors will enrich your own yoga practice so much. There's so many lessons to be learned out there. Lessons in compassion, in understanding, in patience, in equanimity, right? All of these things we can learn in an enjoyable setting and very organically, right? Literally, organically, these lessons will be unfolded to us. Um, so take your time with it, though. Summer is a time to be slow and to be methodical. There's no rush, right? It's going to be just as hot tomorrow and hot the next day. And you know what? It'll be hot the day after that too. So keep keep cool, uh, pace yourself, and enjoy. All right, I'll be back tomorrow, and we will do some asana. How about that? All right,